Hello again, I'm Param Singh. Let's learn some Elixir today. We'll look at expressions, values, and match operator. Some of the key underlying concepts in Elixir that we have not yet talked about. So I'll be working in the IEX session, not much in the editor to design any functions for this illustration. So if you want to follow along, feel free to fire up your IEX session and we'll go from there. Two basic ideas as far as what the computation model of Elixir is. Number one, everything in Elixir is an expression, and we'll see some of the examples in a little bit. And number two, when an Elixir program is run, every expression evaluates to some kind of value. This is basically the computational model, if you will. Start with some of the simplest forms of expressions, which are the literal values. So if I say 1, this is an integer. It is an expression right now, but when I hit enter, it will be evaluated, and nothing too interesting. It evaluates to the same values of 1. So same thing for float, same thing for string, and likewise for a Boolean value. So these are the literal expressions, and they evaluate to the exact same values that you put in as an input. Let's make Elixir do a little bit more interesting computation for us by doing 1 plus 2. So in this case, this expression is a combination of literal values 1 and 2 and an operator plus. And Elixir will follow similar rules as your mathematics middle school algebra to compute its values in this case. So 1 plus 2 is an expression. It evaluates to a value 3. So if we look at a similar string expression, so we have a concatenation operator for string, and if I type this as an expression, it will be evaluated to a string hello space world. Let's look at some Boolean expressions. So 1 is less than 2 and 2 is less than 3. It evaluates to true. So these are a little bit more complex expression, but nonetheless, nothing unusual here. The third form would be the function calls. For example, remainder is a function, and if I say remainder of 3 and 2 is less than integer division is another function, I'm going to say 3 and 2, it's going to produce a value of false. Up until this point, there's nothing unusual, but let's look at a couple of unusual examples here. For example, if I say write a comment, and this is a comment, even this evaluates to some value. It is nil, which means nothing in Elixir, but nonetheless, it still is a value. Finally, let's look at even more interesting example. So I'm going to create a module here. So I can say my mod do. I'm going to define a simple function here in the module, which is going to produce a greeting and end. And this is again is an expression. When it is run, it evaluates to some kind of value. Some interesting value that we don't quite understand yet because it contains some compound data structures that we have not learned, but that's not the point. The point is everything in Elixir is an expression, and that expression when run inside of Elixir runtime environment, it evaluates to some kind of value. Okay, now let's look at a second idea, which is that of a match operator. So match operator in Elixir is the equal sign that you would find. And while it looks quite simple, it is very interesting in terms of its semantics. So the way this operator works in Elixir is that you have something on the left hand side of this equal and something on the right hand side. And this right hand side is going to be an expression which in step 1 will evaluate to some kind of a value. This value is then compared with the structure of left hand side, and if that structure or pattern matches with this value, then this value will be bound to whatever the variables are there on the left hand side. So as a simple example, if I say x equals 1, this is an expression that evaluates to a value of 1. On the left hand side, there is simple one variable, and then x in this case will be bound to a value of 1. To make the left hand side and the right hand side equal, Elixir is trying to bind the values by matching the structure. So what that means is it evaluates the right hand side to a value, and then it asks a question, what should be the value of this x so that left hand side and right hand side are equal. So this may sound quite trivial, but we will revisit this match operator multiple times, and when we start to talk about compound data types, it will become quite interesting, and it is very useful and helpful to understand how it is working. So let's go ahead and create few examples here again in the IEX. So let's say I say greet equals hello, and in this case right hand side is a value, left hand side is a variable greet, and this greet variable is now bound to a value of greet. And once again, even this match operator is an expression, and it evaluates to the value if the match is found to the right hand side value, which in this case is hello. And let's create another binding, in this case 2, and I'm going to say world. So we have 2 now bound to a value of world, and I can use now these variables in my other expressions later in the program. So if I say greet 2 and I get hello world. Each time Elixir sees and runs a match operator, a new value is created on the right hand side, a new variable is created on the left hand side, and then the binding happens. So what I mean by that is, if I let's say create this match and I say 2, so the right hand side evaluates here to world, and then the 2 TOO is bound to this value. So now if I bind 2 to galaxy, so 2 is now bound to galaxy, but 2 TOO is still bound to the value of world. If no match is found, then Elixir will raise a match error. So what do I mean by that? If I say galaxy equals world, so the right hand side evaluates to a value of world, left hand side itself is a value, note that it is not a variable, and now if I run this expression, it says match error, no match of right hand side value world. Okay, and finally, to recap our two topics, looking at the expressions and values, we noted that everything in Elixir is an expression, and then when the program is run, every expression evaluates to some kind of a value v. So here are some examples. We already ran that, so nothing too fancy about it. And then the math operator, which is the equal to sign, the rules are just like your algebraic math equations. For example, here on the right side, if y equals 1, this is equation A, and then x equals y plus 2, this is equation B, we can solve this equation for x by doing the substitution. So the way the substitution will work, on the right hand side, y will be replaced by a value of 1 because of equation A. 1 plus 2 is evaluated to a value of 3, and then x equals 3. So to match this, x has to be equal to 3. That's exactly how Elixir is trying to do. So it says left hand side equals right hand side. Right hand side is an expression which is evaluated to a value first. Left hand side is then pattern matched to this value. Two things can happen. If match is found, then the variables on the left hand side are bound to values on the right hand side. If no match is found, then a match error is raised. So that's it for these concepts. I hope you learned something useful here. And once again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to ask those in the comments section of the video. And I would also encourage you, if you find these videos useful, please subscribe and like these so that more people can take benefit of this information.